The defense budget certainly has declined over the last decade. Specifically, we've seen escalation to fund the Iraq and Afghanistan operations, and with that has seen significant increase in U.S. defense assets and end strength. As we have recently begun the process of withdrawal from Afghanistan and completed our withdrawal from Iraq, we have significantly larger inventories of military assets, weapon systems, and sensors. And what that is causing us to do is, as we're trying to reduce the defense budgets, we have these excess defense articles that are in the U.S. inventory, and which represents an opportunity for U.S. defense contractors to both look at opportunities to help the U.S. government divest of those assets, and then turn around and sell those to foreign military sales for other foreign governments. The process has become increasingly complex to take U.S. defense assets off the U.S. books and transfer them over to another country. We call that excess defense articles. Back in World War II, it was one level of complexity. Now all the way past Vietnam and the early 1990s, when we've done a lot of this, it's really gotten complex. In the services, they're the ones who determine what their requirements are and what their future inventories are going to be. They ultimately work with each of the services, have their own FMS, Foreign Military Sales Agency. So in the Army, it's called USASAC, the U.S. Army Security Assistance Command. In the Navy, it's called the Navy International Program Office. And in the Air Force, it's called the Air Force Security Assistance Directorate out of Wright-Patt Air Force Base. What we know is that there is DSCA, Defense Security Cooperation Agency, who is a necessary partner to follow export controls, to ultimately aggregate all of these requests, and they ultimately work very closely with Congress by putting forward all the requests, and then Congress has to make an up or down decision about whether they're going to approve it. And there are other factors such as the depots. As we all know, there are thousands and thousands of jobs with the depots. Depots frequently are conducting reset of everything from vehicles to aircraft, and they are frequently, their congressman is usually taking a consideration as to whether they're going to support it based on whether the depot is winning or losing business out of it. Great question. With respect to opportunities that affect the excess defense articles process, let's talk by each service. In the Navy, there is a ship transfer list, and there's 28 ships on that particular list. The list has been changing and dynamic. In fact, there's actually two lists. One is a comprehensive list of all the frigates that the U.S. Navy would like to dispose of, and the other list is one that's a little less controversial. For example, the Pakistanis, anything that's going to be transferred to the Pakistanis, the Indians obviously are going to contest. Also, other controversial items would include any ships going to Turkey. For specifically, the Albanians are concerned about what those ships may be used for, and if in fact they would be used in combat role against the Albanians. Those are just a couple of examples in the Navy. In the Army, there are currently 260,000 tactical wheeled vehicles in the U.S. Army fleet. And let's just say, for example, in 2007 and 2008, over 100,000 vehicles were manufactured as part of the ramp-up of operations that I was mentioning a few moments ago. In the GAO report that studied tactical wheeled vehicles, there was an indication that there is at least 42,000 vehicles that are ready to be divested, specifically their tactical wheeled vehicles. The Army holds 12,000 MRAPs, not all of which, but some of which would be transferred to foreign governments. Also, there is a significant number of Humvees. There's been a significant amount of reset conducted over the last 10 years. So the new way forward for the U.S. military will include keeping new and modernized equipment, but there is way more than can be afforded. The GAO report also cited $2.5 billion annually to sustain those 260,000 vehicles. And with the budget pressures we have, we just simply can't afford $2.5 billion annually of sustainment. So again, that results in 42,000 vehicles that at the moment are likely to be divested to other foreign governments. Finally, there's over 4,000 M113 armored personnel carriers. They're mostly very old and are in the process of departing the inventory of the U.S. military, specifically the Army is what I'm talking about here. And most of those have been around since the 70s and have exceeded their useful life. Specifically with the Air Force, there are both fighter squadrons that are in the process of reductions. Specifically, there are 5 A-10 squadrons, about 141 aircraft that are being considered. That aircraft was very effective in tank killing roles for many, many years. In fact, it was brought back for Desert Storm and was a very successful aircraft in the early 1990s. And again, as we ramped up for the most recent combat engagement in Iraq and Afghanistan. The reality on the ground is that those aircraft are very expensive to maintain, and when the Air Force has decisions about buying F-35s or sustaining A-10s, it quickly becomes an issue that we're not going to be in tank wars in the likelihood in the near future. Therefore, they're prepared to take the risk and remove those A-10 squadrons from the field. There are also some smaller squadrons. For example, there's an F-15A squadron and some F-16s. Because they have not been upgraded over time, the cost to maintain those older aircraft are much more than the more advanced versions of the same aircraft, and therefore those are being considered for divestiture as well. With regard to air mobility and the transport aircraft, those are also very expensive, and with the reduction in end strength as well as with equipment and now currently withdrawing from Iraq and Afghanistan, the need to have as many air transport aircraft as we have is diminishing. There's a discussion, again, this is a proposal, to remove 65 C-130As from the fleet. There's also some KC-144 tankers, and there's also some C-27J Spartans. There was a contract for 38 C-27J Spartans that the U.S. Army entered into. At least 10 of those are in the process. The Australians have indicated that they're interested in having at least 10 of them, and many of the other ones are in various stages of production. So opportunities still exist with both the receipt and transfer of those aircraft as well as the upgrading of those activities. With respect to the Air Force, there's also a boneyard out in Arizona that has old aircraft, both military and commercial aircraft. So while foreign militaries are sometimes unable to afford new military aircraft, there's often old commercial aircraft that can be converted for military purposes, and there's lots of examples of that. The first way that IHS Janes can help an organization determine if this is a actionable and executable strategy for them is to help understand what their business strategy is, and then to ultimately conduct a market assessment and determine which are the actionable opportunities or addressable opportunities for the organization. There are a lot of things there are a lot of requests in various stages of approvals. Some of them are tied up in very long political processes. Some of them are trying to move as quickly as possible. For example, those that relate to BRAC, but all the services, some of them are looking to have a BRAC and reduce their infrastructure. Therefore, they need to move and divest some of these assets and move them out of the theater. We can also take a look at the competitive environment and help find some of the partners that may be useful both in country as well as, for offset purposes, as well as U.S. partners. Sometimes the U.S. prime is a good partner. Sometimes sensor and technology upgrades are also available. We can also help with communication strategy. So when it comes to being proactive, one way forward is to let the government process go where it goes, and if there's a transfer, then to try to jump into the mix. Another more proactive approach is to try to help the government, particularly the services, if you know that they are having some assets that they are looking to get off the books and are not going to need in the near or long term to proactively help the services move those items off the asset, get them onto the asset transfer list. And those represent good ideas, but a communication strategy of what the intent of the defense contractor is usually very useful. And then, of course, if you are deciding to pursue those capture support, we can provide black hat and red team support in terms of developing a sensible proposal that would be well received by the U.S. government. The steps in receiving the excess defense article process and building a proper strategy that can take advantage from a industrial aerospace and defense contractor include first to give IHS Janes a call. We would ask a few questions about your business strategy and really want to understand what your growth strategy is. For example, if you are looking at international markets or adjacent markets, it's really important to make sure that this type of a strategy does not sit isolated on the side and is fact part and parcel to an overall coherent and, again, executable strategy. What we then do is to conduct or suggest a market assessment to determine, based on your goals and objectives, which of these opportunities, and again, we're quite good at determining which of the opportunities are going to be executable in which time frame, and put them on sort of a scale so that organizations can map up their pursuit strategies with real growth options, with real timelines that are going to actually come true. After we do the market assessment, again, whether it's certain countries that you want to go after, if it's Brazil, UAE, third world countries, or technologies that you're interested in, we can then take that information and parlay that into an executable strategy. And as I mentioned previously, we can certainly do the capture support and help you think through and make sure that it's a integrated business strategy. So in summary, we're able to help organizations build a strategy around excess defense articles, integrate those into the business strategy, and convert those into real opportunities over time. And we do believe that those opportunities have existed for a while, have been peaking now that we are at the end of a very large military expansion over the last decade, and now we start the withdrawal and eventual reduction of U.S. military forces. That does represent a substantial opportunity for U.S. defense contractors.